The village of Black Hollow was quiet during the day, but at night it became a place filled with fear. As the sun disappeared behind the dark hills, every family quickly shut their doors and covered their windows. No one dared to stay outside after midnight. The elders warned everyone about strange sounds that came from the nearby forest, soft hissing noises, whispers in the wind, and the shadow of a mysterious woman seen walking under the moonlight. For many years, villagers believed an ancient curse lived in the forest. Animals were often found dead near the trees, and travelers who entered the woods at night never returned. Some people claimed they saw glowing green eyes staring at them from the darkness. Others said they heard a woman crying for help, only for the voice to suddenly turn into terrifying laughter. One stormy evening, a teenage boy named Ian became curious. He did not believe the old stories and wanted to prove the villagers wrong. While everyone stayed hidden inside their homes, Ian quietly stepped out into the cold night. The streets were empty, and the wind carried a strange whisper through the air. As he walked toward the forest, he noticed something moving between the trees. A tall woman dressed in black slowly turned toward him. Her eyes glowed bright green in the darkness. Ian froze in fear when he heard a loud hissing sound coming from beneath her cloak. Then, under the pale moonlight, he saw a giant snake tail sliding across the ground behind her. Far beyond the last house of Black Hollow Village stood a dark forest that people feared more than death itself. The trees were so tall and thick that sunlight barely touched the ground. Birds never sang there, and even animals avoided the place. In the center of the forest was an old, broken hut covered in vines and surrounded by dead trees. The villagers believed a mysterious woman lived there alone. Nobody knew her real name or where she came from. Strangely, no one had ever seen her during the daytime. But every night, people noticed a tall figure dressed in black wandering silently through the forest. Some said she appeared near the river, while others claimed they saw her standing beside the abandoned well at midnight. Her long hair covered her face, and her glowing green eyes could be seen shining through the darkness. Old villagers warned children never to go near the forest after sunset. They believed the woman was not human. According to the stories, years ago a cursed spirit entered her body, turning her into a half-snake creature. Since then, strange things started happening in the village. Chickens disappeared from farms, animals were found dead without a single wound, and travelers who crossed the forest path vanished forever. One cold evening, a woodcutter named Rahim returned home shaking with fear. He claimed he had seen the mysterious woman standing between the trees. As he watched her, her body slowly twisted, and beneath her black dress appeared a giant snake, tail moving across the ground. Rahim ran back to the village, terrified. That night, nobody slept. Outside, deep in the forest, a long hissing sound echoed through the darkness. Every night in Black Hollow Village felt darker than the last. As soon as the moon rose above the forest, a heavy silence covered the area. The villagers stayed inside their homes, keeping candles lit and windows tightly closed. They feared the thing that wandered between the trees after midnight. People often spoke about the glowing green eyes. Some claimed they saw them watching from behind the bushes, while others believed the eyes appeared outside their windows before someone disappeared. No one knew if the mysterious woman was human or monster, but everyone agreed on one thing. Her eyes were not normal. They shined bright green in the darkness like a predator hunting its prey. Along with the glowing eyes came another terrifying sound, a long, cold hiss echoing through the forest. It sounded like hundreds of snakes moving together across dry leaves. The sound usually started softly, then slowly became louder until it surrounded the entire village. Dogs barked wildly when they heard it, and even the bravest villagers became pale with fear. One rainy night, a young farmer named Bilal was returning home late from the fields. As he walked near the forest path, he heard the strange hissing sound behind him. At first, he ignored it, thinking it was only the wind. But then the sound grew closer. Bilal turned around slowly and froze. Between the trees stood a tall woman dressed in black. Her glowing green eyes stared directly at him without blinking. The rain fell heavily around her, yet she did not move. Suddenly, the hissing became louder, and Bilal noticed something horrifying dragging across the mud behind her. It was a giant snake tail. Before Bilal could scream, the woman smiled, revealing sharp fangs shining under the moonlight. The terrifying stories about the mysterious snake woman spread through Black Hollow Village for many years. People disappeared without a trace. Strange hissing sounds echoed every night, and glowing green eyes were often seen in the forest. Most villagers were too frightened to even speak about her after sunset. But one young man named Ian refused to believe the old legends. Ian was brave, curious, and tired of living in fear. He believed the villagers were only imagining things. Whenever the elders warned him about the cursed woman in the forest, he laughed and called the stories nonsense. Secretly, however, he wanted to know the truth. One cold night, Ian heard the familiar hissing sound outside his house. The wind blew hard against the windows, and dogs barked wildly in the distance. Instead of hiding inside like everyone else, Ian quietly grabbed a lantern and stepped out into the empty street. The village looked lifeless under the pale moonlight. Doors were locked, windows were dark, and the only sound came from the forest ahead. Then Ian saw her. A tall woman, dressed in black, slowly walked between the trees at the edge of the forest. Her long hair covered her face, but her glowing green eyes shined through the darkness. She moved strangely, almost as if she were gliding across the ground. Ian's heart pounded with fear, but he followed her silently into the woods. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. The hissing sound grew louder around him, as if invisible snakes were crawling nearby. Suddenly, the woman stopped beside an old abandoned well in the center of the forest. Ian hid behind a tree and watched carefully. Then, under the moonlight, he saw something horrifying. The woman's body began twisting unnaturally, and beneath her black dress, a giant snake tail slowly appeared. Ian followed the mysterious woman deeper into the forest, trying to stay quiet. The trees around him looked dark and twisted, blocking the moonlight above. Every step he took made the dry leaves crack beneath his feet. The cold wind carried strange whispers through the woods, and the hissing sound grew louder with every second. Soon, Ian realized he had gone farther than anyone from the village ever dared to travel. The forest felt dead. No birds sang, no insects moved, and even the wind seemed afraid. His lantern flickered weakly as shadows danced between the trees. Then he saw something ahead. In the middle of a small clearing stood an old abandoned well made of cracked stones. Thick vines covered its sides, and dark water dripped slowly into the deep hole below. The villagers often spoke about this cursed well, saying it was connected to evil spirits long ago. Many believed anyone who looked inside after midnight would never return. Standing beside the well was the mysterious woman. She remained perfectly still, her back facing Ian. Her long black hair moved gently in the wind, and her glowing green eyes reflected in the dark water below. The hissing sound around the clearing became almost unbearable now, like hundreds of snakes hiding in the darkness. Ian hid behind a large tree, trying not to breathe too loudly. Fear filled his chest, but he could not stop watching her. Suddenly, the woman slowly raised one hand toward the well. The ground beneath her began to shake softly. Then something horrifying happened. The woman's body started twisting in unnatural ways. Her bones cracked loudly, and beneath her black dress, a massive snake tail slowly slid across the ground. Scales covered her skin, shining under the pale moonlight. Her glowing eyes became brighter as she turned her head toward the forest. For one terrifying moment, Ian realized she was smiling directly at him. Ian stood frozen behind the tree, unable to move or even breathe properly. The mysterious woman beside the abandoned well slowly lifted her head toward the moonlight. The cold wind blew through the forest, carrying the terrifying hissing sound all around him. Then her body began to change. At first, Ian heard a loud cracking noise, like bones breaking inside her body. The woman bent forward unnaturally as her long black hair covered her face. Her arms twisted slowly, and dark green scales started appearing across her skin. The glowing green eyes became brighter, shining like fire in the darkness. Ian wanted to run, but fear held him in place. The woman let out a deep, terrifying hiss that echoed through the entire forest. Suddenly, the lower half of her body stretched and changed into a giant snake tail. The scales glistened under the moonlight as the tail slithered across the ground, crushing dry leaves beneath it. The transformation became more horrifying every second. Sharp fangs slowly appeared inside her mouth, and her fingers turned into long, claw-like nails. Her eyes no longer looked human. They looked cold, empty, and deadly. The forest around Ian became silent. Even the wind stopped moving. The snake woman slowly turned her head toward the tree where Ian was hiding. Her glowing eyes locked onto him instantly, as if she had known he was there the entire time. A cruel smile appeared on her face. "You should not have followed me," she whispered in a cold voice. Ian's heart pounded wildly as he stepped backward in fear. But before he could escape, the giant snake tail suddenly moved across the ground with incredible speed, blocking his path. The lantern fell from his hand and shattered. Darkness swallowed the forest. The broken lantern left Ian trapped in complete darkness. Only the pale moonlight shining through the trees allowed him to see the terrifying creature standing before him. The mysterious woman was no longer human. Her upper body still looked like a woman, but below her waist stretched a massive snake tail covered in dark green scales. The tail moved slowly across the ground with a horrible scraping sound. Dry leaves crushed beneath it as the creature circled around Ian like a predator hunting its prey. Every movement of her tail seemed unnatural and fast, making the forest floor shake softly. Then she began making terrifying noises. At first, it sounded like a deep hiss, but soon it became something far worse, a mixture of growling, whispering, and human screams echoing together. The sound came from all directions at once, filling Ian's mind with fear. He covered his ears, but the horrifying noise only grew louder. The snake woman smiled, revealing her long, sharp fangs. "You cannot escape now," she whispered. Ian stepped backward slowly, trying to find a way out, but the creature's giant tail blocked every path between the trees. The glowing green eyes never left him for a single second. Suddenly, the tail moved quickly toward him, wrapping around a nearby tree and crushing it like dry wood. Ian realized the creature was not only terrifying, it was incredibly strong. The hissing sounds around them became louder as smaller snakes started appearing from the darkness. They slithered through the leaves toward the clearing, surrounding the abandoned well. Hundreds of glowing eyes stared at Ian from every direction. The snake woman lifted her head and let out a deafening scream that echoed through the entire forest. Far away in the village, people woke up in fear, knowing another victim had entered the cursed woods. Ian stood trembling in the middle of the dark forest as the snake woman slowly moved closer to him. The moonlight reflected off her green scales, making her giant tail shine like wet stone. Around them, hundreds of snakes slithered through the leaves, surrounding the clearing near the abandoned well. The terrifying creature stopped only a few steps away from Ian. Her glowing green eyes stared directly into his soul. They looked cold, ancient, and filled with evil. Ian tried to move, but fear had completely frozen his body. The hissing sounds around him grew quieter, as if even the snakes were waiting for something to happen. Then the woman smiled. Her sharp fangs glistened under the pale moonlight as she slowly leaned closer to Ian's face. The air around her smelled cold and rotten, like something dead hidden deep inside the forest. In a soft whisper, she said, "Anyone who sees me never survives." The words echoed inside Ian's mind like a curse. Suddenly, the ground beneath him began shaking violently. The snakes around the clearing hissed loudly and moved in circles around the old well. Ian finally found the strength to step backward, but the snake woman moved faster. Her giant tail slithered across the ground and wrapped around his legs tightly. He fell hard onto the cold dirt, struggling to break free. The creature lowered herself closer to him, her glowing eyes burning brighter than ever. "You were warned to stay away from this forest," she whispered again. Ian screamed for help, but nobody could hear him this deep in the woods. The trees swayed violently as a freezing wind passed through the forest. Suddenly, the abandoned well behind the snake woman began making strange noises, as if something else was waking up beneath the darkness below. The moment the snake woman loosened her grip, Ian pushed himself off the ground and ran as fast as he could through the dark forest. Branches scratched his face, and thorns tore at his clothes, but he did not stop. His heart pounded wildly as fear filled every part of his body. Behind him, the snake woman let out a horrifying scream that echoed between the trees. Ian kept running, trying to find the path back to the village, but the forest no longer looked familiar. The deeper he ran, the darker everything became. Thick fog slowly covered the ground, and the cold air felt heavy in his lungs. Then he heard it again. Hisses. The sound came from behind him. Ian turned quickly, but there was nothing there except shadows moving between the trees. He continued running, breathing heavily, when suddenly the same hissing sound came from his left side. Then from the right. Then from everywhere. The forest seemed alive with terrifying whispers and snake-like sounds surrounding him from every direction. Ian realized he was no longer being chased by only one creature. Something else was hiding in the darkness. Panic filled his mind as glowing green eyes began appearing between the trees. One pair, then another, then dozens more. The eyes watched him silently while the hissing grew louder and louder. Ian stumbled over a tree root and fell hard onto the muddy ground. Before he could stand again, he felt something cold slide across his arm. A snake. Then another wrapped around his leg. Ian screamed and pulled himself free, running blindly through the fog. Suddenly, he saw the lights of the village ahead. Relief filled his chest as he rushed towards safety. But just before reaching the first house, he heard the snake woman's whisper directly behind him. "You can never escape me." The people of Black Hollow Village woke early the next morning after hearing terrifying screams echo from the forest during the night. Thick fog covered the ground, and the air felt colder than usual. Everyone feared that another person had fallen victim to the cursed snake woman. When Ian's family realized he was missing, panic spread through the village. A group of brave men gathered with lanterns and slowly entered the forest to search for him. None of them wanted to go near the abandoned well, but they had no choice. The deeper they walked into the woods, the stranger everything became. The trees were covered in long scratch marks, and dead snakes lay scattered across the ground. A horrible smell filled the air, making the villagers nervous. Finally, they reached the clearing near the old well. The men froze in fear. Ian was nowhere to be found. Only his muddy shoes lay beside the cracked stones of the abandoned well. Around them were giant snake tracks pressed deep into the dirt, far larger than any normal snake could leave behind. Some tracks even circled around the well before disappearing into the darkness of the forest. One villager slowly looked inside the well using his lantern. The water below was completely black. Then, from deep inside the darkness, came a soft hissing sound. Hisses. The frightened villagers stepped back immediately. Suddenly, someone noticed fresh tracks moving away from the well, not toward the forest, but toward the village itself. That night, nobody slept. As the moon rose over Black Hollow Village, glowing green eyes appeared once again near the edge of the forest. And somewhere in the darkness, a woman's voice whispered, "Ian is with us now."